Welcome to Neural Mint, where history is not told, but experienced. Today, we're launching our explainer of a truly monumental 12-part documentary series that dives deep into the life of George Washington. We're going to look closely at the architecture of a founding father, taking you from his early years in colonial Virginia all the way to his rise as the very first president of the United States and, the massive global legacy he left behind.
Section 1. Beyond the Legend.
So when we think of Washington, we usually picture this flawless, unshakable symbol, right? The guy carved into mountains or printed on our dollar bills. But the reality back in 1775 was actually vastly different. Washington was an untrained, 43-year-old soldier right in his prime, carrying massive, almost crushing uncertainty into a war that would literally define a nation. Sure, he was tall, powerful, and fiercely determined, but guys, he was definitely no marble statue. You've probably heard that famously revered title he was given, first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. I mean, it sounds absolutely perfect, doesn't it? But the deeply human truth behind that grand title is that this powerful leader actually lost more battles than he won. Just let that sink in for a second. Defeat after defeat on the battlefield. And yet, through just sheer, unbelievable resilience, he never actually lost the war.
A 12-part journey.
This explainer series is going to span his entire incredibly epic life. We're talking everything from his early days exploring the rough wilderness, right through the brutal, bloody struggles of the Revolution, to his absolutely critical role in shaping the Constitution, and finally, his lasting legacy at Mount Vernon. It's a massive story.
Colonial Virginia roots.
Born in 1732 into a pretty respected family, Washington entered a world where the United States didn't even exist yet. Think about that. North America was really just a collection of British colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast. So, to really understand the man who would take command of a whole army in 1775, we've got to zoom in on an incredibly tragic turning point that hit him back in 1743.
Now, colonial Virginia wasn't just a place on a map. It was this highly structured, incredibly rigid society. Everyday life there revolved entirely around agriculture, trade, and local politics. But here's the real kicker. Your opportunities, your wealth, literally your entire future were largely dictated by your social status and your family connections. It was a very elite world operating with very clear, strict rules and expectations.
An early tragedy. Let that stark number just sit with you for a moment. 11. That was his exact age when his father died in 1743. I mean, obviously it was a massive emotional gut punch, but in that rigid Virginia society we just talked about, losing the patriarch essentially meant losing your guaranteed path forward in life. So at barely 11 years old, young George was staring down a set of totally daunting challenges that forced him to grow up, essentially overnight.
Forging a leader.
See, while so many of his wealthy peers were being shipped across the ocean to get this polished, formal English education, George was completely denied that path. Without his father's backing, he had to scrape by. He had to learn these hands-on, highly practical skills just to survive and help support his family. Ultimately, this is what pushed him to find his way as a surveyor, literally mapping out the rugged frontier wilderness.
But here is the thing. That sudden hardship, it didn't break him. It completely forged him. Losing that formal safety net gave him an incredibly fierce sense of discipline and a really heavy burden of responsibility. It basically lit a fire of deep ambition inside him. Since he couldn't just coast on an inherited path, he built an ironclad reputation for hard work and unwavering reliability. And those are the exact traits that would later carry him through crushing defeats in the French and Indian War, through the brutal freezing winter at Valley Forge, and all the way into the highest office of a brand new nation. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question as we wrap up this explainer. How exactly does a grieving, uneducated 11-year-old boy channel that massive early tragedy to eventually command an entire army and build a nation from scratch? Well, we've seen the foundation being poured today. We know the raw materials he was working with, that intense discipline, the raw ambition, those practical survival skills. But the actual journey from a young surveyor roughing it in the colonial wilderness to the commander of the Continental Army, well, that is where the true cinematic drama of his life really unfolds. So thank you so much for joining me for this experience today, and I will see you in the next part of our series as we track Washington's first fateful steps into the wild.